Ooh. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live extreme weather update with a monster nor'easter right now, just centered just to the east of Cape Cod. That minimum pressure has now dropped to 984 millibars, and just an absolutely spectacular satellite image. This is the water vapor imagery, and you can see what appears at first glance to be this eye feature. It's lifting off to the north now, just to the east of Cape Cod, and even though it looks like an eye, that's actually an area of trapped, relatively moist air inside, right near the surface low, and this dry punch has completely enclosed that air right in the middle, almost like an occluding tornado with a supercell, where that rear flank downdraft, that descending warmer air, wraps completely around the inflow air, trapping that air inside of a vortex. That vortex stretches, occludes, and then eventually you get a new tornado that forms off to the east on the nose of that rear flank downdraft or that RFD punch. It's incredible to see the similarities even at different scales of weather, from the mesoscale up through the synoptic scale here. And in this case, this is a deepening surface cyclone there that is now down to 984 millibars. Zooming in here, you can see exactly where that minimum pressure is located right now, just to the east of Provincetown. Provincetown has definitely had some very gusty winds. It's probably a little bit calmer right now in Provincetown, a little bit closer to the center of that pressure. Really, that pressure gradient force maximizes as you get a little bit further away from that low pressure. But there it is, the center of that low pressure with dry air trapping it and closing it completely. Probably even seeing the blue sky come out here around Provincetown, down to Yarmouth areas, down here on the end of Cape Cod. Could even definitely see some clearing skies out there. I guess that you could call this almost like an eye feature of this mid-latitude cyclone. Boston, the last I checked, had 4-star rain, 34 in rain, but that coastal front has definitely slid through the Boston area, so it's probably in the process of changing over to snow if it's not over there already. Here you can see the winter storm warning area. There's also these special weather statements for 1 to 2 inch per hour snowfall rates up here, southern New Hampshire, up through southwestern Maine. Lewiston is really going to get rocked from this event up toward Waterville. I've covered some nor'easters up into southwestern Maine there. Definitely a beautiful place to cover those nor'easters. But look at this incredible satellite presentation. This is a baroclinic monster textbook. If you look it up in a textbook, this is a picture that you see thriving off of the temperature gradients here on the western edge of the Gulf Stream. The phasing of two different systems, a northern stream and a southern stream system, to combine into this monster. We were watching it earlier when it was just off the coast of Delmarva a little bit earlier. Now bring this warm nose again into down east Maine here, and that's why you don't see any of those winter weather alerts in down east Maine. You do have some flood alerts here in New Brunswick, also the western tip of Nova Scotia there. But it's going to be all snow, and it already is snow from northeastern Connecticut to the higher elevations of central and eastern Massachusetts. It's about to become snow in Boston. Probably only a few inches in Boston, as that warm nose is a little bit underestimated. Notice this wobble back to the west, closer to the coastline with this surface low. Those wobbles make a big difference when you're talking about nor'easters and a very tight snowfall gradient. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some bigger totals just a little bit inland from Concord, New Hampshire, Manchester area up through Lewiston, Waterville, Maine. Those areas are still going to get hammered, but the areas right along the immediate coastline down through Boston, probably only an inch or two, if I had to guess. I've been monitoring the surface maps throughout the day today, and it just looks like that temperature stayed a little bit too warm, with kind of an underestimation of that warm nose there in coastal Massachusetts. But what an incredible system. Let's pull up some visible satellite imagery. It's probably already dark up there. Definitely not even close. Infrared, always fun to look at as well. And you can't really see the center quite as well defined in infrared, but you could definitely see, we just looked at water vapor, and it kind of had that area of relative moist air trapped right near the center. And you can see some colder cloud tops, probably some showers, a little bit of convection right there near the convergent center of this nor'easter. And then you can see these cold cloud tops off to the west in the deformation zone back here, banding happening. Definitely warm advection, though, out ahead of it. big time warm advection with this conveyor belt slamming into eastern Maine there. Definitely getting some lift from that. But then you get winds shifting to north-northwest, bringing in that deeper, colder air, shifting it over to all snow. A lot of banding back here as well. And you may have heard the mention of slantwise convective instability. And that's definitely a big deal out here as well with these nor'easters, especially when it's been a long time since the last nor'easter. That instability on a slantwise uplift tends to build a little bit longer over time. And then when you get just a little bit of lift with the arrival of these systems, it can definitely shift that slantwise instability into action. And with these warm conveyor belts, pretty much all the lift associated with a system like this is lifting up on a slantwise surface. It's going up and over top, cooler air at the surface. Everything is slantwise generally with a nor'easter, with the exception of these supercells that are down in the warm sector of this nor'easter over the open Gulf Stream, where there's likely been a bunch of water spouts during the day today. Discrete supercell modes out ahead of this, almost like a dry line feature, but it is definitely a cold front. Big, strong westerlies on the back side of it. After this thing moves off, you're probably going to see some ocean effect snow showers down on the Cape, but definitely just a textbook calm ahead. Look at this beautiful storm system out here, now just moving off the eastern tip of Cape Cod. You can definitely see where that center is based on water vapor imagery, especially mid-level water vapor imagery, because you can kind of see that relatively moist air kind of trapped in the center of this cyclone. You can definitely see the cyclonic motion here. You can see those westerlies starting to rip off the southern Cape down here. Those are going to happen rapidly. Boston, you've got north-northwest winds probably starting to shift over to snow already. Let's take a look now at radar. It's pretty hard to move off of a satellite image like that because it's such a incredibly beautiful image. But now we're going to take a look at the snowfall. You can see the banding here in Massachusetts. Look at that, big time banding happening. Here's the center of the surface of the nor'easter. It's down to about 984 millibars, and you can definitely see this blob of trapped moisture, almost like a tornado vortex, except on the synoptic scale here at the very center of this nor'easter. Dry air wrapping all the way around that trapped moisture, and there's even some convection right around the center of that as well, which is pretty incredible. Maybe even some transient supercell structures in there just off the eastern Cape right there. But this is definitely the center of that nor'easter. Dry air wrapping all the way around, trapping that moisture inside, almost like how a supercell with the rear flank downdraft will occlude, wrap all the way around that inflow air, trapping it inside, and then you get the stretching of that vortex and the development of a tornado cyclone. Similar concept here, except Coriolis force obviously plays a much stronger role on this scale. But this is basically an occluding cyclone, dry air wrapping all the way around it. It's still going to do some strengthening. It is forecast to be into the upper 970s over the Gulf of Maine. Pretty heavy precipitation out here in the Boston area. And it does look like it's changed over to snow in Boston now, at least based on radar. Certainly see some of these hydrometeors. A lot of water on it, some wet snowflakes, and that rain snow line has just slid offshore, so it does look like it's all snow now in the Boston area. This is basically the coastal front sliding off to the southeast as those winds shift to northwesterly back behind it. This is the correlation coefficient, so you can see those hydrometeors associated with that change over to snow right there. That's as those snowflakes will get some wet droplets on them and look a lot different than the rest of the hydrometeors. And then the winds will shift out to a north-northwesterly direction. The air mass, the cold air mass, will get quite a bit deeper, and then it changes over to snow as that surface low passes to the east, and then those winds shift and develop just a little bit of a westerly component, and then suddenly that air mass gets a lot deeper. Worcester mass, lull, getting hammered out there by heavy snow. Looking at the surface map, too, a lot of those temperatures are about 33 degrees, so you're really going to require those 1 to 2 inch per hour snowfall rates out there. You can definitely see a very wet snow just above the ground there, just inland from Boston. But look at the banding out here, too. Just getting hammered out near Worcester, up toward Manchester, Concord. Gonna shift the radar sight up to southwestern Maine. And you can see the special weather statements there for the very intense snowfall rates. Looks like there's some gravity waves within this as well with those heavier snowfall rates. Real heavy snowfall rates about to move into Lewiston there. And then you start to mix in with rain right near Augusta. You can see some bright banding happening there as those big snowflakes become wet snowflakes and have a bunch of droplets on them, kind of pseudo melting. But it looks to me like the warm nose has certainly been underestimated a little bit with this system, and that wobble a little closer to the coast certainly happened. It appears that the surface low is almost moving in a due northerly direction right now. And now I can show you the RAP analysis to show you exactly where the RAP has analyzed the center of this nor'easter. And there you can see it's analyzed at about 984 millibars, certainly probably a bit lower than that by this time. But this is the RAP analysis. There you can see that surface low. It appears to be lifting north-northeast at this time. Those low-level winds have shifted to more of a north-northwesterly direction. Should change everything over to a bit of snow out there. Let's step forward with time 2 hours from now. There you can see that band, the RAP, holding on to that band, and then it slides into Boston here in about 2 to 4 hours, the heaviest snowfall rates. So Boston is definitely going to end with a period of very heavy snow right to the west and to the west-southwest of the low center, and then that band quickly lifts off the coastline. That'll be in about 6 hours, so late night tonight, probably about late evening, getting a little closer to midnight. That heavy band is going to definitely move off the coastline there by about 3Z, 10 or 11 p.m., 3 to 4Z, 3 to 5Z, I would say it's going to move off the coastline there in Boston. Still some very windy conditions, though. Look at how tight these isobars are as you get a little bit removed from the center. Out near the Cape, it's probably a little bit calm right now because you're really close to the center of that nor'easter. With these baroclinic systems, the wind fields are very large, and usually the temperature gradients are a bit removed from the center of the low pressure. With a hurricane, though, you get a very tight pressure gradient right along the eye wall there, and all the strongest winds are focused right along the eye wall with a barotropic system. In this case, this system thrives off the temperature gradients on the west side of the Gulf Stream. Here you can see those temperature gradients there. Definitely focus right along the coast of Maine, the tightest gradient there. And that's where you got the conveyor belt of warmth and latent heat release happening just to the east of this system. That's why there's a lack of winter weather conditions, winter weather alerts in down east Maine. Now, finally, we're going to look at a surface map. Then we'll look at some snow maps. And look at Boston. It has changed over to snow, 33 degrees, visibility down to 2 miles. That heavier band is just inland, northeastern Connecticut. The higher hills up there are probably getting hit pretty hard. But the heaviest snow is going to be across southeastern New Hampshire, Concord, Manchester, but still temperatures 33, 34. You really require those heaviest snowfall rates to realize some of these totals. But then you're going to get snow in excess of a foot across southwestern Maine here. Lewiston, Waterville areas will probably be some of the hardest hit. Looks like it's just changing over to snow in Portland now, 34 over 33 there, right along the coast. Winds are due northerly, but you really need these north-northwest winds to get that cold air mass to deepen and to really get that over to some heavy snow there right along the coastline in Portland. Let's look at some of the models here, see what they show. I think that many of the models kind of underdid that warm nose, especially right along the coastline. They kind of showed a western wobble of this system, but it actually did the opposite, almost like an occluding tornado, lifting more to the north, doing kind of a left-hand turn right as it matured. And in fact, this HRRR run seems a little bit erroneously too far east. I would say that the center of this low might even be just a bit closer to the Cape. That's 22Z, so it's probably about accurate, this latest HRRR. Definitely accurate with the timing of the changeover there. And Boston, too, at about 22Z, 22 to 23Z, and it is changing over. Boston right about now. Portland is also about 34 in rain. Should be changing over. It's going to stay all rain in down east Maine. And that band hangs on. This is 1Z here, so you definitely have heavy snow in Boston this evening, and then it moves out, starts to move out here by about 4 or 5Z as we get close to midnight. You're still going to have those snow showers hanging on there. Heavy snow continuing across southwestern Maine. The surface low is now down to 978 millibars there, just off the coast of Maine, bombing out. These nor'easters are almost like hurricanes in that you're out there waiting along the coast forever when the thing arrives. You're watching the rain snow line, and then suddenly it moves in and bam, it's done. And then blue sky comes in. The dry air on the backside of these things, that mid-level dry slot, as you saw in satellite imagery, can really never be underestimated. So usually blue skies will move in. By tomorrow morning, there's going to be bright blue skies out here. Beautiful scenes of snow, probably some power outages tonight. There's been some gusty winds, quite a bit of heavy wet snow, inland away from the coast especially. And let's see what additional snowfall the HRRR is showing. Still shows quite a bit of snow, but this was since about 20Z out here. That's since about 3 p.m. It's already almost 5 o'clock Eastern, so we've already had 2 hours of this snowfall. But it even has several inches of snow all the way down to Boston, but there's probably going to be a little bit less than that. I do think there is going to be a period of heavy snow, 1 to 2 inch per hour snowfall rates, but it's not going to last very long before it moves offshore by about midnight. I'd say probably 2 to 4 inches, though, especially to the north of Boston, a little bit removed from the coastline. Could get hit a little harder up toward Lowell, southeastern New Hampshire. But southwestern Maine, interior Maine, the mountains of interior Maine are going to be the winners here, up to 1.5 feet possible up there. A lot of that's already fallen. Let's take a look at the NAM model here. This is the 18Z NAM. That's the forecast for 21Z. An hour ago. So about an hour ago, it had the 984 low there, about over Martha's Vineyard. And this is at 0Z. Here in a couple hours. It has it down to 981 millibars. Continues its track, but boy, it looks like based on satellite imagery that this thing is lifting a bit further north than maybe the NAM or even the HRRR is showing. Could take that surface low a little bit closer to the coast, which would keep Portland borderline and keep that heaviest band of snow just inland across Lewiston, Concord, New Hampshire there. These wobbles are a big deal because it could take that band of snow and shift its direction just a little bit. And it looks like it reaches peak of about 978 millibars there since 18Z, where you can see what the NAM has been showing. And boy, the NAM is showing some of those in excess of a foot totals up near Lowell, Manchester, Concord, even approaching 2 feet up there just inland from Williston in that higher terrain. So we'll have to see if some of these are going to verify. The Weather Service has definitely upped many of the totals across southeastern New Hampshire and interior Maine just a bit. This 18Z NAM even had 8 to 10 inches of snow falling right along the immediate coastline there. This is a GFS model. Might be the most accurate one here. It's high res. Oh, I see. So the GFS seems to have a pretty good handle on this snowfall, and this is since 18Z, with the heaviest snow happening across southeastern New Hampshire into southwestern Maine here. Not as much in the Boston area. It seems like the GFS definitely predicted more accurately predicted the strength of the warm nose and maybe even the western wobble of that surface low. Has quite a bit falling there, still in Portland, in excess of a foot, right along the coastline, immediate coastline there. 3-kilometer NAM as well, since about 18Z. Right along the immediate shoreline, it has about 6 inches even there near Boston. A little higher just inland, in excess of a foot, up near Lowell, Manchester, Concord, southwestern Maine. And it seems like the 3 kilometer NAM did a pretty good job at predicting the warm nose being a little deeper, a little more stout there in Portland, maybe keeping those snow totals a little bit lower along the immediate coastline with that heaviest band of snow just inland there. Let's go back to radar once again. Watch this nor'easter dominate here. Oh, man, is it close. I say 5 to 12 inches there in Portland. That low end probably right along the immediate coastline. But still, those heavier rates, snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour, the heaviest snow looks like it is just inland here. These areas out near Paris, even near Conway, Wolfboro, I guess it is, Lewiston as well. These areas are getting hammered up toward Pittsfield, Farmington, Maine. And these areas here are going to be the hardest hit areas with up to 1.5 feet happening. So it is definitely a dangerous evening out here in New England. But I think if you are traveling up toward that area, I think it's going to clear out pretty quickly. And during the day tomorrow, roads will probably clear out quite quickly as well. I've got some really good snow removal out here in the Northeast in anticipation of these nor'easters. But a beautiful place to cover snow. I'd obviously love to be up there covering this nor'easter, but I'm going to wait for a bit stronger of a system. Traveling is just a little high risk these days, especially with the coronavirus blowing up. And I've been about a month now of having these antibodies, so who knows if I still have them 30 days later. Probably, but it's not really worth the risk, of course. But you can definitely see where these special weather statements align. That's where the strongest bands are happening. Lowell is also probably going to get hammered. You have been getting hammered. Quite a bit of snow already accumulating out there. Very wet snow. Power outages happening as well. And you can get these alerts right here. Are available on the Radar Omega app. That's what I'm using here to show you all this incredible imagery. With that said, that's the nor'easter. I'm going to show you again, going back to satellite imagery. Let's look at this beautiful satellite imagery of a textbook nor'easter. This is water vapor. Really show you the strength of that dry punch coming in here. And then kind of enclosing this little area of even some convection, some moisture air, low top convection right near the center of this thing. Almost like a tornado where the dry air wraps all the way around it, occludes the tornado, it ropes out, and your next tornado forms in the nose of that rear flank downdraft a little bit further east. Incredible to see the similarities between a nor'easter like this and a supercell storm. Got the hook-like appendage wrapping around the backside. Obviously, Coriolis force doesn't matter as much in a mesoscale as it does on these larger scales. But definitely a beautiful system. And boy, I'll tell you what, based on satellite, this thing is moving due north, and that's going to bring it further to the west, and almost all the models are showing. And I think that's going to really hold down snowfall totals right along the immediate coastline, Portland off to the northeast especially. And definitely has held down snowfall totals along the immediate shoreline in Boston, kind of delaying that changeover a bit. Definitely that warm nose was underestimated by many of the models. And you kind of had this elongated low that formed, almost an elliptical shape to it, which also helped to wiggle that warm nose just a little bit closer to the coastline and keep it as a 4-star rain for much longer through the early mid-afternoon there. But that doesn't mean it's not going to, conditions are going to deteriorate rapidly though this evening, as that rain has changed over to snow. Visibility down to 2 miles there in Boston. But you can definitely see the intriguing little area of low top convection right near the center of this 984 minimum pressure here at the center of this nor'easter. It's probably relatively calm in Provincetown, maybe with some blue skies showing up with that dry air wrapping all the way around that. And then the precipitation will ramp up again as the wraparound moves in, changing over to snowfall there in Boston. And we'll break down this in the Storm Chase EDU modules coming up here this winter, this month, ideally. And we'll break down all the processes that come together to create these magnificent storms off the East Coast that thrive off the temperature gradients, fortified by the warm Gulf Stream, a warm ocean current that lifts from south to north just offshore. You just get basically a semi-permanent temperature gradient that exists right along the coastline here. So all you need is that cold blob of air in Canada, big high pressure up there. In this case, you had a northern stream system diving down from Canada, an active subtropical jet, pretty active system down there emerging, almost like an El Nino pattern here during La Nina conditions in the Pacific. And I suspect that as we get a little closer to the middle of December, we're going to go back toward more of a traditional La Nina pattern. This is kind of a little aberration that you often get. Sometimes you get little La Nina patterns during an El Nino and vice versa. But then you average everything out over the longer term, and then that tropical and subtropical Pacific forcing, even the extra tropical Pacific forcing matters so much more. But this is it. I'm just going to let this loop ride here. Beautiful loop. Dry air has already shut off the precipitation there in New York, where it stayed all rain. It has some snowflakes there in the higher terrain in southern New York as this thing was wobbling up to the east-southeast and then made this dramatic turn. And now it looks like it's moving more to the north. The wobble of the surface, though, definitely influenced by the magnitude of the dry air wrapping around that center and maybe even that little low-topped blob of convection just off Cape Cod there. Pretty incredible storm system hammering southeastern New Hampshire into southwestern Maine. I hope you guys enjoy my weather reports. Never stop chasing.